Hey guys, before we begin today, just want to let you know I am traveling. My laptop has died multiple times. Is barely hanging on by a thread. We did this podcast with Ben and myself. We got about halfway through, and then technology just completely died on us. So I solo the second half of this podcast. I know it's not ideal for championship season. I do apologize, but we're working with what we have. We'll get Ben for next week again to go over the second half of kind of that discussion a little bit again, get his quick takes before we move on from there. But I am going to kind of solo the second half of this podcast. So just a heads up and enjoy the episode.
Hello, and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me from Paris, Garrett's Island. How's it going, man?
It's been a nightmare. I have no other way to put it. It's just been an absolute nightmare for anyone who's not familiar. I've been in Paris and France for a wedding, and not only did they lose my luggage in Madrid, which I did get back, but then my laptop on Championship Week decided to die, and they can't do anything in the Apple Store because the components are very different. The battery, the keyboards, I can't do anything about it. I've used my friend's laptop. I've had to type an article from my phone. To say it's been a nightmare would be an understatement. Had a great time at the wedding. Awesome time. But we are also hoping to get through this podcast as my laptop is now just meandering by at a 24% battery. So hopefully it holds. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is gonna be a little bit of a loopy one. I'm up early. I post a wedding last night as well.
Oh,
Garrett
okay.
is facing technological issues, so hang with us. But we had an exciting weekend of track, and we're going to dive into that. We had, I think, one new rating on Spotify. I think we're up to 158 there. So good news there. But let's just jump right into the analysis and get into what was, I think, one of the most entertaining NCAA championship
Mm-hmm.
that I can remember. And let's just start where the meet all began, and that was in the 10K. On the men's side, my biggest takeaway from this was we were trying to figure out what it would take for Habtom Samuel to not win this race, and it turned out that even a fall could not stop him from winning this race. And he looked every bit the favorite that we expected en route to I mean, it wasn't dominant win, but a very convincing win, I think is what you call it. And he pushed the pace early, was rewarded with it, was able to pop back up from that fall extremely quickly and get right back to the front. It was a tour de force of racing by Samuel this weekend.
He was just the best. Like, let's just call it how it is. He was the best guy in that field. It wasn't close. Um, and, I couldn't help but wonder. I'm like, if this race was not as aggressively run as it was, because he's the guy who goes out there, pushes the pace
Mhm.
initially. But if this is like a little bit more of like a sit and kick kind of race, does he have enough? Like, is the field tired enough that he shakes them
Yeah.
off if he falls, in which he does? But that was my big thing. I'm like, man, if this was like a 29:30s kind of race, like a jog fest basically for a lot of these guys, even 29 minutes, like you have to wonder like, man, do, do they stick with Samuel? Do they outkick him? Do they fend him off with fresher legs? I can't help but think that they do. But the fact that he runs 28:07 and wins the title,
Mhm.
he was just the best guy. He was the best 10K runner in the nation outside of maybe Nico Young, probably Nico Young. And yeah, that I would like to give like more analysis to that. I have nothing more to offer.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good point that him making sure that it was a more honest effort, I think, came to his benefit after that fall, because I agree. I think everyone would have been able to really fly and put a little bit more distance between him after the fall if it was at, like you said, a 29-minute pace. You look down the rest of these results. Victor Kiprop second. I think that wasn't much of a surprise there. Dennis Kipnetigetich, I think great run from him, 28:10 to finish third. Ernest Chariot, same thing with him in fourth. It was such a shame because I think Alex Phillip was right there to
Mm-hmm.
finish in the top three before his fall, and he was not able to kind of pop back up quite as quickly. It looked like he got that fall kind of hurt him a little bit more, but he looked every bit like one of the top contenders that we thought he could be coming into this race, and that's why I think it's such a shame that he ends up finishing 12th after the fall.
Yeah, and like it, and the harder part to like reconcile it is that like it's not like you look at the results, the top 8 All American results, and you're like, well, this guy robbed him and this guy robbed him. It's like
Yeah,
actually no, like everyone has had seasons showing that they were deserving of that respective All American finish, whatever it was, and so it's hard to be like, well, he was robbed, and like he was, but also like I struggle to like look down everyone else in that All American list and be like, I don't know, man. I think he just had a really good lucky race. Like I think all those guys like were just flat out talented. Like there really weren't too many shockers or surprises outside of Phillip. And even then, like you wonder. It's like okay, well, I don't know if XYZ is that much more deserving, that much less deserving.
yeah,
I do feel bad for Phillip. I thought he was probably going to be in a great position. The one guy who I really like is Tyler Berg. I thought he had a phenomenal race. He was
yeah.
not supposed to be as high up as he was. Yeah, I was just super, super impressed. And he continued to fight, continued to fight. So, yeah, impressive stuff.
Yeah, one of a lot of men who ran PRs in this race, which
Hmm.
is not something you see at an NCAA championship 10K very very often. So, yeah, honest effort. There truthfully isn't that much to talk about in this race. It was pretty chalk. A couple surprises as we mentioned, and the way it kind of ended up folding or coming out was a little bit different, obviously with that fall. But at the end, the result was as expected. Habtom is your men's 10K champion. Let's go on to the women's 10K, and again, pretty chalk here. Parker Valby, and my notes here, I said dominance from Valby as she took it quote unquote slow to win in a meet record time. 31:46 smashes the NCAA meet championship record, runs a minute behind her PR though, basically. Was looking like she was jogging, like looking up at her coaching staff nearly the entire race, just begging to like be let off the leash, it seemed like, and
Yep.
and just crank the pace. I thought she ran a really smart race. I think this is what enabled her to really push it in the 5K, and she clearly like held herself back for as long as she could and still won by 5 seconds over Hilda Omaway, who ran a fantastic race behind her as well. Really gave her about as much as anybody has given her Valby a hard time in the NCAA this year.
I have nothing to offer. I mean, like this race was even way more chalk than the men's,
Yeah,
which is surprising because the men's race was already very, very chalk. So you look down the list, it's like Taylor Rowe third. Yep, could have predicted that. Molly Bourne fourth. Yeah, sure. On a good day, that makes sense. Chloe Scrimger, Georgetown. Jenna Hutchins, I think, in sixth place for BYU was like a big, big time result for her. I
sure.
think we've always recognized this like she's been super talented and she's had the pedigree and she's had just the upside. But there's been times recently in the last year where I'm just like, deliver, deliver, and establish some consistency. And she hasn't until this season. It wasn't
Mhm.
exactly the flashiest season ever, but it was plenty good enough to be an All American, and I thought she was plenty deserving. And then you get Sydney Vault in seventh, Grace Hartman eighth, Peyton Noe ninth. Not or Noe, I think it is Peyton Noe. She might be like a relative to a handful of women, like the biggest winner of this race. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it's just that chalk, and I'm not really sure what else to say other than that.
Yeah, I think the other surprises were Lily Murphy and Amaris Tanisma not finishing. Tanisma especially was like up near the front for a while and
Yeah,
looked
and
pretty
Andrea
good.
Markovic.
And yeah, same could be said about her. It was hard to tell what happened to these women, since Valby obviously was kind of taking up a lot of the screen and was so far ahead of the rest of the field. Um, but those you would have expected that group of women to finish pretty high if they were able to finish. But yeah, I agree. I think Molly Bourne was probably the only one from a positive side that like stuck out, finishing as high as fourth. But we've seen her. I mean, we know her talent. We know that when she's at her peak, she can run with almost anybody. So really good weekend for those Oklahoma State women up front.
I would love to offer more. I really would. It was so chalk. I don't have. I mean, shout out to Chloe Scrimger. I think we just overlook how
Yep.
consistently awesome she is on the national stage. Other than that, I just don't have, and I don't have a lot more. I don't know what else to say. I mean, we can really extend the Parker Valby legacy conversation to the 5K, but
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about the Valby legacy in general, I think, over the next week or so. Obviously, yeah, terrific weekend that we'll get more into. Let's go to some chaos, though, and this is where the chalk stopped in the men's 1500. Just a wild finish. Everyone, I mean, you're looking at 1 through 10 was separated by a second and a half. It was madness, and everybody was right there at 400. Pretty much everybody was right there at 200, and it is Joe Waskom who just from the depths of the field kind of maneuvers his way to the outside and takes home the title over Elliott Cook, Adam Spencer, and Colin Solomon, who Solomon had looked like he had it before kind of losing form over the last maybe 30, 40 meters and getting passed by the three in front of him. Washington men do it again. 5th straight 1500 meters / mile title. I mean, and Waskom, like, I think
He wasn't having a good season.
Was like 0.15 away from a three-peat in the 1500, like only losing to I think Jared Naguse. Is that right?
I don't know if that's right.
I think that's what he put. Let me please hold. You go.
Wax poetic. The wildest part in all this is that Waskom wasn't having a good season. Wasn't having a good year. He wasn't. He just wasn't. Like, to say that he was anywhere near his former national title self would be completely misleading. It wasn't true. He has not been the same since February. The times reflect that he's not been the same. Just some of the races in general, he has not been the factor at the front of these races. And yet this race was just slow enough. And yet we're talking now in a day and age where 3:39 is like, quote unquote, just slow enough. That he gets it. And it's so frustrating because you and I sit here on these mics every week and we say, here's all the things that we have learned. Here's what history tells us. We analyze. And yet it's this kind of performance that makes me bang my head against a wall because I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I mean, he's not supposed to be winning the title. He's just not. He was not ranked in our top 25. I don't think he was, frankly, all that close to being ranked. It was, I mean, I know this is his second national title, but this is an upset. This is arguably one of the biggest upsets of the entire weekend outside of maybe, another men's race that we'll get to. Actually, a lot of the men's races, but that's not the point. Yeah, I don't really know what to say. I'm just very frustrated by Joe Waskom. So.
Yeah, he was 0.15 away from beating Nathan Green last year. Sorry, I don't know why.
Okay.
So he's from three-peating, which is wild. Like, because you're right. Like, he hasn't felt like this dominant. Like, obviously he's been good like throughout this, like All-American favorite in a lot of these races, but he hasn't ever felt like an overwhelming favorite. And yet he just turns up at the biggest moments, especially during the outdoor season, and comes through. And Elliott Cook looked fantastic, and he looked like he had like pulled off the inside pass on Solomon to take home the title. He was spectacular this weekend. And Adam Spencer, I mean, what can you say? The guy just always puts himself right there. It's a shame that he's very deserving of one of these titles for the run that he's been on over the last few years. Third place, though, the very, very good run. And Solomon, the inexperience, I think, showed a little bit there at the end, but he still ran a spectacular race, finishing 4th.
Yeah, I think Solomon was just like in one of those positions where it's like, I don't know if he wanted to be like the leading guy at that close of a pack coming off the turn. Like, I think he didn't necessarily want to. I think he's smart enough to know that like maybe it would have been more advantageous to swing off the curve and then jolt to the front. But I think the way that the race like played out, how he positioned himself, like I think he just kind of got caught in that scenario, and yet he still salvaged a really good fourth place finish. Which, I think this is like, these are the things that we talk about during the season of like, there's a difference between running really, really fast and then executing tactical perfection. And he still ran actually a really solid race considering the madness that happened there. So, um, Nathan Green and Luke Hauser though, 10th and 12th, two of the bottom three spots. That's what makes this the most like, we're like, well, these two guys are national title contenders, but Waskom's not. And then Waskom wins, and then these guys are take two of the bottom three spots. That's why I hate these 1500 these prelims and these finals, because they're so tactical and you never know what's going to happen. And then you get Green and Hauser doing that, and I just throw my hands up in the air and I'm like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, Hauser just looked like he just didn't have it, and Green was just like trying as hard as he could to kind of put that surge. Like he just went and went and went again, and couldn't make up that much ground, unfortunately. I think Damian Dilcher and Wes Porter though are the big winners of the weekend for the 1500. They had fantastic weeks to not only I get to the NCAA meet, but then make it to the finals and then finish 5th and 6th against this loaded of a field. Incredible performances from both of those guys.
And like they were phenomenal. Like, I mean, the fact that they got through the rounds, kicked how they did, executed, really great across the board. And that's what makes such a stark contrast to, like, again, Waskom wins, and then Dilcher's 5th, and Porter's 6th, and even Ropp is 7th. And then you get below them SIE, Strand, Green, Murphy, and Hauser, which is
like that could have been, you could have just listed like the first, second, third, fourth.
Yeah.
That's how wild this field was.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I think the 1500 is a fascinating event. I think we did feel like there was like a bajillion different like people who could win. Well, I think we realistically said 3 or 4 guys, but there are other guys where I was like, maybe in the right race, Elliot Cook could, right? Or maybe in the right race, whoever, someone who I'm not thinking of, but Murphy. Yeah, I think Murphy was probably in that same conversation, but yeah, I don't know. I'm frustrated. I'm happy. Like, congrats to Joe Waskom. Like, to have that season and then to still come out with the title is really, really cool. But
it was a joy to watch. It was not a joy to analyze. Like, it was hard to figure out what we learned from this, because it just flew in the face of a lot of things that we've seen throughout the regular season. But it was exciting. There was a lot of moving pieces the entire time. And that's why you love the you gotta love it from just like a spectator view and hate it from a trying to figure out how to predict it, because it is pure chaos most of the time.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna stop rambling of this like disbelief of like everything that just happened. So that's all I got on the men's 15 though.
All right, well, let's go to the women's 15, where Maia Ramsden has taken the chaos straight out of the 1500 meters by just being the best runner in the country. And I mean, we're going to have the conversation at some point about maybe one of the best 1500 meter runners ever, or 1500 milers ever in the NCAA. 4:06 to take home the win. Took the lead from Lindsey Butler like a little after halfway, and just never looked back. Like, it just put in a huge gap. Kimberly May, Claudia Kazmierska gave chase as much as they could, but no one was even in the same ballpark as Ramsden. Like, today, this year, quite frankly, she has just been that much better. And this result, and her ability to just front run and just like surge, like not just like from 400 out, but from 600, 700 meters out, and just completely put the race to bed that early is just stunning. And I haven't seen quite anything like it in these middle distances, really, on the men or women's side, that I can think of. And she just makes it look, quite frankly, easy. And she did that once again this weekend.
Like, you see the gap she opens up, and you're like, does she miscount? Like, you just don't know. Like, it's you cannot believe that someone's that dominant in an event that really shouldn't be. And like, isn't it wild that the women have chosen to be way more honest in these
Oh yeah.
races than the men? The men are like, nah, we're good. We're actually going to leave this up to like a true jog fest, which I never truly understood. I guess, I don't know. I don't know if there's a good answer
It
to that. I
wasn't
can see.
true. I would say I mean obviously they were coming through like not like in 65 seconds at any point. Like they were a little like it was somewhere in between like honest and jog fest. For the women it was full go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think in this day and age, like 3:39 for me, like even winning that time, like just with having everyone there,
Yeah,
to me, it's still just super tactical and a
sure.
borderline jog. Maybe not a complete jog fest, but yeah, I think the problem with like the Ramsden conversation of like all time best miler is that like she has the credentials, but like Jenny Behringer,
Yeah.
right, is the one who has run what 3:59 for fifteen
Yep.
hundred, I think, but she has 1 mile national title and all of her other successes in the steeplechase and
Sure.
in other events, right? So it's like, well, then wait, how do you decide in this very like black and white world of like they are the best, they're not the best, whoever it is. How do you reconcile the fact that like Behringer was faster, she has a title, and all of her accolades are just as arguably as good, but Ramsden has proven to be the best overall miler over probably like a 2 year stretch, year and a half stretch, whatever it may be. Um, and that's like I think the hard part of that conversation. But I can't believe that we were at a point asking like who's maybe going to be more dominant in their respective races of Ramsden versus Valby. It was still Valby, but like not by a lot.
Yeah, both pretty much came through as much as you could have expected. And I think that's the like we've seen dominance over the higher distances, but when you get to that 800 and the 1500 meter especially and the mile, it's just so hard to completely just suck the randomness out of it. And she's just that good, that consistent to be able to do that. And I keep harping on that because like even some of the best men and women we've seen in this event still lose like a lot of times because like the NCAA championships are a different beast, and Ramsden has not fallen prey to that whatsoever. Behind her, I think like you run down this list, it's all a lot of these women you would expect who have had great seasons: Kimberly May, Claudia Kazmierska, Melissa Riggins, Flamina Askell, Shannon Flockhart, Lindsey Butler, and then Olivia Howe finishing out that All American spot in eighth. I mean, it's a true representation of all these women. Like they all fully deserved it. They were, I think, smart to kind of hold back a little bit from Ramsden's move because I think they would have blown up if they had if women had tried to go with her. But they had a fantastic chase back, and ultimately it was May who came out in front. And pretty much any other year, I think May is at least a 1-2 time champion over the course of the year.
Yeah, and these are the things that like I struggle because like May is more deserving of a national title than prior women over the past five to
Yes.
10 years who have won a national title in this event. She just is. Like the season, the year she's put together is phenomenal. Um, I don't really know how much more I can say about her, but kind of going down the list, it's very chalk. Kazmierska, great race, her best race ever, but I think we also knew that like she probably had something like this within her. Um, Reagan's fourth, almost actually a complete match of her mile performance from the indoor championships. Asakal fifth, good result. Flockhart sixth, Butler seventh, Howe eighth. I mean, like, yeah, you could have said, okay, I thought Congdon or Bush or Scheinbecker or O'Sullivan would have been in that mix, but like, I don't think I think you could have put these women in any order outside of like May and Ramsden at 1, 2. But I think you could have put everyone else in any order, and I could have been like, okay, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean it was a loaded field, and yeah, Kazmierska, this was definitely like her best performance, and we hadn't seen her quite feel like at her best like we had maybe last season, but she peaked at the right time, and we knew she had the talent to be capable of something like this. I don't have that and Askell, like I know we like there's been some question marks about her consistency, and obviously we knew at her best she could hang. So props to her for just like coming through this weekend. She looked very, very good in prelims, very, very good in the finals. When we bring up those question marks, we also have to praise when she absolutely comes through, and she did that.
I like that. Yep, I think you're absolutely right. Especially because she had to go through the rounds of like that 15, 5K, neither of which were slow at the East Regional meet. Came back like she obviously faltered a bit in the 5K, but no one's going to blame her there. Um, so yeah, so all right, I'm with you. I think that's all I really got there on the women's 15. Where did you want to go next?
Let's go men's steeplechase, and it was Parker Stokes, surprisingly, taking home the victory over Nathan Mountain. Just seemed to kind of outlast him. Mountain had
Mm-hmm.
a rough last water jump, but still was able to kind of recover and put himself in position. But it was Stokes ultimately who took home the win over, I think, pre-race favorite Nathan Mountain, and in third, Gable Sepierda. And fourth, another pre-race favorite, Abdelhakim Abu Zahir. Winning time 8:24, fast but nothing crazy. And I think that's kind of what enabled Stokes to ultimately have the best kick. Obviously, great middle distance chops. And he just looked back to the guy we had seen 2 years ago when he
Yep.
finished third. And we'd kind of been waiting for that. And I'll speak for myself. I thought it just wasn't going to happen for him. Like it just seemed like he was running well, but not quite to the level he was a couple years ago. And then he comes out and wins an NCAA championship when I feel like I had written him off from ever being able to do that. Fantastic race for him. This one went down to the wire. It was so much fun to watch. You had kind of a lot of the guys you expected right up there challenging for the lead, and yet one of the guys that you didn't expect is the one who takes home the trophy.
I don't know if I was as dismissive.
Yeah,
I
you
don't.
definitely weren't. I will put myself in that
Yeah,
category.
to be fair, I didn't think he was going to win, and I didn't think he was a favorite. I thought I was like, you know what, like maybe on a perfect day and a few things break his way and like this and that, maybe kind of sort of possibly it happens. But I was with you. Like, I don't think he was favored by any means to do so. I think there's a handful of key important pieces, though, that happened here. One, Victor Kibiego
Yeah.
DNFs in the prelims. And that's huge. Like, because in this race is just slow enough where it's like, he uses that last lap kick of his and maybe things get really interesting there. Like it's not like this was, like you said, like a barn burner. It was still honest and fast and really, really strong, but he was, you can't help but wonder. I'm like, man, what would Kibiego have done in this situation had he not DNF'd? And then, a handful of guys like Rob McManus did not make it out of the prelims, right? James Corrigan was not an All American, right? There's a handful of guys there. You kind of go down the list and you're like, man, there's a handful of things that did break Stokes' way where, he really didn't have to deal with a handful of guys that I thought he might have to. And so I think that's, for me, one of the biggest takeaways, and maybe I don't want to say why he won the national title, but I think getting to win that national title was a little bit easier when you don't have to have like two or three really, really strong guys to deal with.
Yeah, certainly helped. You can't ignore that at all. Yeah, the Kipiego thing was really weird. It didn't look like it was that bad of a issue, and then all of a sudden it proved it proved that he was unable to continue. For Mountain, he was so close. He had it. Like it really looked like going into the last like 200 that he was going to be able to do it. So a little like heartbreaking that he wasn't able to close, but still a fantastic race. He put himself in great positions. He was right there to be able to take home the title and ultimately finish second. It's hard to be too disappointed in the race that he run. And for Sapir, like this was what I was talking about. I think the whole year is like you front run, you like prepare yourself for this type of race, and then you don't front run. You like you're smarter about it at NCAA's, and this is what can happen. He runs 8:25 PR for third place, and he was awesome. Like this was definitely the best race of his season, and it came through at the perfect time. Abu Zahir just didn't look like he was like on perfectly on it today. Like
Mhm.
I think on a day when he is like everything's clicking, I think he very well wins this race.
Yep.
but like the fact that it wasn't super super fast, I think played to his disadvantage when you're going up against some guys like Stokes and Mountain who have much better middle distance chops and overall speed. And then lastly, I'll just close with like CJ Singleton. Well,
Yeah.
this was like wild. This came out of nowhere. I could not believe that it was CJ Singleton that was up there. I thought that was Tom Seitzer for a while. I was like, okay, yeah, he's kind of been putting himself in those positions, but no, it was Singleton who put himself in that high of position early in the race and then hung on for 5th place. Absolutely stunningly great performance from him.
And then Estanis Ruiz 6th, Yassine Sato 7th, Alex Korzinski's 8th. Guys that I felt like were very deserving of this, whether it be this season or in past. Saipi, come on, of all the times to like not be super. I mean, this guy was like gas, front run, and then he was arguably the most conservative guy in the race, and then he gets the best result, which also like. Yes, that's what we've been saying. Look what happens. What I've been saying, like, look what happens. And it was a great race. He was smart to do what he did. I got to admit, like, I didn't have him in my All-American predictions because I was worried about how he would handle, kind of the tactics and the nuances of that. 3rd is awesome. It's really, really awesome. 4th place, I was here, like you said, not bad, but he just was. It didn't. He looked like he was at like 90%. It did not look like he was at 100%. And then Singleton. Singleton's been like a really steady, solid, reliable guy despite being an underclassman. But there's still been like nuances and things of like his race tactics that have been like, don't do that. And just other things of that nature that I've been like, I don't know if he'll be top 5. I don't know if he'll be, if he is an All-American, maybe like a very back end, like 7th or 8th place. 827 though, was a sophomore. Like he might be like a national champion in the very near future.
Yep. Yeah, he'll certainly be one to keep an eye on in the future. Anything else before we go to the women's steeple?
No, I think that's it. All right, I'm now taking over solo. I know it's not ideal. I do apologize, but want to give off my last few thoughts here, get some analysis going for the rest of the national meet, women's steeple, the 800s and the 5K. Let's go back to that women's steeple. Doris Lemngole wins it, 9:15, collegiate record. Olivia Markovic still runs extremely well, runs 9:17. I don't have a lot to say about this one. I mean, I think first off, let's start with Lemngole. There's a real possibility that she has a collegiate career that ends up being not too far off from Parker Valby and from Caitlin Toohey. She's only a freshman, runs the collegiate record to win a national title, her first national title. She's run all-time marks over 5,000 meters. She's probably going to be an elite 10K runner. I'd be stunned if she didn't win at least one cross-country national title individually. She's just fit and aerobically the best. She just is. And, there's not really a whole lot to really argue that. Parker Valby is up there, and then I would say maybe Maia Ramsden's right there. But I think Lemngole is probably closer to that Valby Ramsden tier than maybe whatever that next tier of middle and long distance stars are. She's incredible. And to just simply outrun Olivia Markovic, who still runs 9:17 and puts together a great race, there's a lot of positives. There's a lot of good stuff to like about that. At least, when talking about the future, I think there's a real possibility that we're looking 3 years down the line. Should she, stay in college and, stay with Alabama, we're talking about like a 9:11 kind of collegiate record, 9:10. Like, is it crazy to say that she could one day scare the 9:10 barrier? Like, that's a pretty absurd time. But again, she's only a freshman. So Markovic, I mean, she had a great race. Like, I don't want this, the fact that she got silver to take away from this idea that, she had like some kind of, I don't want to make it seem like she had some kind of bad race. You know what I mean? She was actually phenomenal. She did really, really well. Narrow PR. There's only so much she can do. And I just don't blame her. So as for everyone else, Janet Schraft, Third place from Iowa State, 9:34. Great run from her. When I saw her race at the Stanford Invite and I saw her win, I was impressed. I was really impressed. Not just because she ran well and she beat the field comfortably and yada yada yada, but because she looked so poised and in control, and it seemed like she had more to give, like comfortably more to give. And we didn't really see that throughout the rest of the season, as in, she's more just kind of refining herself for the postseason, for the national meet. And then she unleashes a huge PR, third place, well deserved. I think in a field that was kind of a little bit wide open past, Lemngole and Markovic. I know some people thought, maybe Thorner and Karen Eskate would be battling for that third spot. But I think some people are like maybe a little surprised. I'm not totally shocked. Not totally shocked. I thought she would be an All-American. I don't think I saw her placing third, but still a great effort. Really impressive run. Greta Karen-Eskate fourth. Good season. I think obviously last year was better. Laura Taborda, I think this is the 9:35 mark. It's a clear PR for her. Reliable veteran. She was always that steady, great, experienced steeplechaser, but didn't really have a home run hitting mark to really accentuate her resume. Now she has it. Fifth place. I think she's out of eligibility now. So she was steadily awesome for Arkansas and for Ole Miss and for EKU for the time that she was there in the NCAA. Elise Thorner, sixth place. Good. I think we thought she could finish as high as third. I think I thought Markovic, I thought Thorner might have been a little bit closer to Markovic and could have maybe given her a scare, but Markovic had obviously just a phenomenal race. Sophie Novak and Carrie Balaga get 7th and 8th, running 9:40 and 9:42 to round out the All-American spots. Great runs. Like these are the kind of runs that you would expect from someone like Novak. And then Balaga, given how well she ran in those prelims, some momentum, the move to NAU has very clearly benefited her. It has paid off in a pretty substantial way. I think there's an argument that she could be an All-American in the fall. Especially when you run 9:42 as a freshman in the steeplechase, and you're an All-American. So excited about what her future holds. Other than that, not really a ton here. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot more to offer. I think the 12 women who made the final were probably the 12 best women. Like I don't think anyone was like robbed of not making the final. I think you can maybe say Olivia Morganti from Penn. She didn't make the final, but this is a pretty chalk race. It just is. All right, let's move on to the men's 800 meters. Men's 800. Shane Cohen was a D2 All-American. I don't know if I quite want to say star, but he was a strong D2 name. Really decent 800-meter runner. Goes to Virginia, and you're like, okay, maybe this guy can possibly maybe sort of kind of end up scoring points at the ACC meet for the Cavaliers. That would be considered a successful stint at UVA. Well, then he starts running really well throughout the season, and he gets a little better and a little better and a little better, and he runs 147, and then he runs 146, and then 145 at the regional meet, gets out of the prelims, and he makes it over to the final 100 meters of this race, swings off the curve from the very back, outkicks everyone, and runs 144.9 to win the national title. I like Shane Cohen. I think anyone who listens to this podcast knows that I like Shane Cohen. It's big praise coming from a Virginia Tech alum. I like Shane Cohen. I did not like him enough to say that he was going to win a national title. I think I even put after like the first day of action in our First Thoughts article, like, he's getting really dangerous. I'm not picking him to win a national title. I'm not saying he's going to win a national title, but I thought he was like, oh, it wouldn't surprise me if he got third or fourth. It surprises me that he got the title. I mean, to run 144, to make all of the improvement in the time that he did, unbelievable breakout season for him. Huge, huge, huge run. I would be surprised if he doesn't win breakout run of the year or most improved in our end of season awards. Well, I guess we'll have to see, but he was phenomenal. Sam Whitmarsh, second place. I mean, 145 low. I mean, still a great run. I do think he could have been a little more aggressive or at least put himself near the front. He still ran a good race, but I was a little surprised he wasn't didn't position himself a little bit closer to Roden, who took out the lead. Finley McClear, third place, 145.66, his third time under 146. Again, positioned himself well, kicked well. He just knew what he was doing. And now it kind of feels like he's kind of really back at that peak form. I mean, maybe he's not perfectly peaking, but at least he's not maybe perfectly at his prior top tier form, but he's awfully close. And if he comes back next year, which it seems like he could, given the eligibility, I'm not sure yet. I don't know about that, but is it crazy to say that he could maybe win the national title next year? I think Whitmarsh comes back as well. So great runs by them. Tyrese Roden, fourth place, 145. He just matured as a racer this year a lot, and you saw it throughout the postseason. I loved how he was still able to maintain his aggression, his aggressive front running, and yet he still found a way to be conservative at the end, or at least delay his final gear until later portions in the race. He was a little more calculated with how he was going to run certain races there. So great season by him. I think this was a well-deserved fourth place finish. Sean Dolan, Villanova, fifth, 145. Good. Great, actually. Not a whole lot to say there. Yusuf Bizimana, sixth place. We said that he was probably one of the title favorites along with Whitmarsh. I don't want to make it seem like he had a bad season, because he didn't. He actually had a really solid season. He ran 146 5 different times this spring. But it just, in a year where, you needed 144 to win the national title, and you needed to run 145 to be a top half All-American. Really, at some point this season, you needed to run 145 to be a true national caliber contender. But given Bizimana's pedigree, knowing what he's done previously, knowing that he has run 145 before, I think we kind of just gave him the title contender status by default, given what he's done. And I think that's deserved, but we never really saw that version of him this season. He looked great at Big 12s, took down Kipyego and Sebastian Fernandez. I don't quite know that we ever saw the best version of Bizimana this year, though. Come off for Carson, seventh, Nick Plant, eighth. New guys relative to the NCAA system. Nick Plant's only a sophomore. For Carson of Texas A&M, he is from the JUCO ranks, I believe. So, these guys are still new to this kind of level, but Nick Plant, Virginia Tech, is second All-American honor? So, second? Third? Let's go. I think it's just second, but second All-American honor. Well-deserved. Camden Marshall gets tripped in the final 100 meters, and it's as Shane Cohen is coming off that curve and trying to swing outside. I can't tell. It looks like Cohen potentially hits the back leg of Marshall, and maybe that sends him falling. I don't know if it was enough for me to be like, hey, someone needs to get DQ'd. I don't know what the rules are in terms of, who is viewed as at fault there. I think it's probably Cohen, but again, I don't know if it was blatant enough for me to be like, oh, well, he should be disqualified. Because frankly, at that point, Marshall's already at the back. Maybe he makes a move to get up a little bit higher. He absolutely could have. And, maybe he gets fifth or fourth. I haven't totally figured out what I think about that situation, what happened there, and who was at fault. So, all right, that's it. That's it on men's 800 meters. Let's go to women's 800 meters. Juliet Whittaker, 159.61, with teammate Roisin Willis, 2 flat in second place. Gabrielle Galvadite in third, 2 flat. Michaela Rose, narrow fourth place finish in 201. Haley Kitching 201. Sanu Jallo, 201. Anaya Mosley, 201, 7th place in Lauren Tolbert, 8th place in 201. Sophia Gorierin, 9th in 203. Why was this the race where she chose not to be aggressive? I don't really understand it. Like, this was the race where you would expect her to go to the front, and they went out in 58 seconds, which is not like blistering. I mean, it's fast, but it's not like crazy fast. If that pace goes out in 56 high or 57 low, does this outcome look different? I think it might. I do. I think it might. I don't know why Rose did not hit the gas. She takes over with about 400 to go, maybe 350 to go. But she just couldn't get enough separation in that back straight off the back curve. And you see Whittaker and Willis like inching up, and they're coming, and they overtake her in the final 100 there. I didn't understand why, of all times, you don't go with that approach. And maybe it's because, you saw what happened at the indoor national meet. Rose goes gas, 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 and Whittaker just sticks to her. Right. Although I think they still came through in like 58 seconds. So I had to go back and double check that. But maybe that was the reasoning behind it. But regardless, Whittaker is awesome. Another great season. I think she has probably established herself as the best overall 800-meter runner. She may not have the numerous sub 2 minutes and the 158 PR that Michaela Rose does. And while Rose may be the most fit 800-meter runner, Whittaker's probably the most complete. She's probably the best. Like, she can move up to the 1,500 a mile better than most women in that field, almost everyone. Tactics are great, knows when to strike, can still run a super fast time. Now 2 national titles. Phenomenal execution. And Roisin Willis, great run for her. Kind of a quiet regular season, not really a whole lot. And then rips off a phenomenal postseason, takes home wins in the Pac-12. And I don't know if she won the West Regional title, but, goes off now, gets second. She ran a handful of great 201 marks or faster. I think like 4 or 5, I want to say. She was great. She was great in the postseason. She sharpened at the right time. She peaked at the right time. And that was good because didn't look great during indoors. She did not at all. And I was a little concerned. So I'm glad to see that she peaked well. Galvadite, again, another one who peaks perfectly. 3rd place, knew when to execute, great kick. This was probably the best version of Galvadite that we've ever seen, I think. Depends. But great run from her, near her PR, 2 flat. Again, talked about Rose. Kitching 5th, Sanu Jallo 6th. Good runs. It's about right, given what Jallo has done. I think Jallo really validated her 159 PR from the SEC championships this past weekend, I should say. And I don't have a whole lot to say about Kitching and Jallo. I thought Kitching continued to be one of the single most reliable women over 800 meters in the NCAA. She was. Anaya Mosley, what a breakout season for her from Ohio State. She really caught my attention when she ran 4:12 or 1,500 at the Penn Relays. And then she just kept good performance and good performance and good performance. And then she started dropping 201 marks, like out of nowhere. Like, if she really had not run, I think prior to like the Big Ten championships, or like the East Regional meet or something like that, there was like prior to like the East Regional meet, I don't think she'd ever run faster than like 203, 204, something like that. And then she drops multiple 201 marks to be a 7th place All-American. She has an argument to be the most improved for our end of season awards, like the winner. She was absolutely fantastic. An incredible race from her. I don't know if we can we nominate Sanu Jallo again as most improved after I think she won the award during the winter? Can we nominate her again? I don't know. Let me know. But and then Lauren Tolbert, 8th place. Sophia Gorierin, 9th. I mean, the fact that Tolbert made the final was huge. I did say that she was my sleeper to make the final, and she did. Got 8th place. Gorierin tried to be aggressive. Not her day. She was a little bit inconsistent throughout this year. I hate that. I hate that it's 9 places and top 8 are All American or first team All American. Man, that stinks. But Gory Aaron will be back. She will be a multi-time All American. Like, not worried about it. All right, let's wrap things up with the men's and women's 5K here. Let's go down to the men's 5K. Parker Wolfe holds off, outkicks, however you want to phrase it, Nico Young and Kai Robinson to win his first national title. I think we thought he was the only realistic threat to Nico Young this season, and that proved to be the case. But still, huge upset. I mean, when you're Nico Young and you run 12:57 over 5,000 meters, dominate the indoor national meet like he did, run 26:52, throw down 3:34 marks for 1,500 meter. I mean, you're the heavy favorite, regardless of how good Wolfe is. But Wolfe, credit to him, sat perfectly, kicked perfectly, really good execution. I can't help but wonder, like, are we sure Wolfe is coming back next year? I think he is, right? He probably is. Olympic year, national title over a major name. Maybe a company comes calling and says, hey, you want to end the collegiate career early, sign a pro contract? Maybe it happens. I don't think so. I also have no insight. I have no like original insight or like anything that's, I don't have like an inside look at the program or Wolfe or whoever it is, but time to strike when, the time to get one of those contracts is when, the momentum's high and the iron's hot. And right now that's the case for Wolfe. Young, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a super tactical race, 1350s. I think, I think it makes me pause a little bit about how the Olympic trials will go. I do wonder, like, it depends if that race plays out in a more tactical manner. Now, I think he's only doing the 10K based on the Instagram post. I don't know if he's doing both at the trials. I'd have to go back and look. The way he made it sound in his Instagram post, Nico Young, is that he'd only do the 10K. We'll see. I don't know. But yeah, just the way it based on his Instagram post. I'll be interested to see how that more tactical nature, if that plays a role in potentially Nico Young making the team. So, Kai Robinson, third. I mean, fought, can only do what he could do. Not much to say. Brian Massau, fourth. Graham Blanks, fifth. Great run from him. Great run from Massau. Massau had an underrated season. He beat Habtom Samuel, running 13:13 for 5,000 meters at the Brian Clay Invite. Huge win. Now gets fourth in this 5K field to be an All-American. He didn't have a great Big 12 showing, but outside of that, I mean, he was really solid. So, liked what we saw from him this season. I could one day see him winning a national title. I do wonder if he'll move up to like 10K one day. Unsure. Brent Blanks, like, good rebound season. I mean, this could have been, a really tough season for him, and he salvaged a 5th place spot. It was within striking distance of a lot of key names. So kudos to him, because again, this could have gone very poorly, but I don't think he's going to be anywhere near his 13:03 form by the trials. I'm not saying that, but at least I think he'll have some momentum to be able to utilize at the national meet or at the trials. Excuse me. Habtom Samuel, double back for 6, good. Toby Gillen, Jesse Hamlin, 7th, 8th place, All-American finishes. Great runs. But as I look kind of like at the rest of the field, the rest of this 5K field didn't exactly excite me in any major way. And so you really could have convinced me of a handful of men that were going to take those bottom 2 spots, and I would have been like, yeah, sure, that sounds about right. Gillen and Hamlin, I think, had great seasons and great years, and I think we're more than deserving of those spots. So, Kale Grotenhuis, narrow 9th place finish. Great year for him. He's another guy who could be part of that breakout season kind of, most improved award. But that's it. Like, I don't really have a whole lot else on that men's 5K. So, all right, let's wrap up here with the women's 5K. Parker Valby hits the front, hits the gas, gaps the field. 14:52 5K time and a new collegiate record. I believe now she has six titles. Yeah, 6 titles. She has 3 outdoor, 1 in cross, 2 indoor. The GOAT argument is on the table. She has the collegiate record for the indoor 5K, collegiate record for the outdoor 5K, collegiate record for the 10K. Has 6 national titles. There's an argument, I think. I think people are going to be very quick to jump and be like, but Caitlin Tui, she's better than Caitlin Tui. I won't disagree with anyone who thinks she is. I don't totally disagree, but I'm wanting to let this sit and marinate a little bit, because I think it's easy to jump to be like, oh, well, now this person did the most recent really cool thing, so now they're the best. I want to let a few months sit before we really kind of talk about where Valby is compared to Tui. Right now, I think you could, a lot of people would probably say that Valby probably end up having the better career. But I still think it's a little bit closer than people realize. Incredible career. It looked like for a while Valby would just not be healthy enough to get through the NCAA. But 14:52 multiple times now is wild. It's so impressive. It is so impressive. So, yeah, kudos to her. Amazing career. I know she has junior eligibility. I know she could technically come back. I feel extremely confident, based on some conversations that I've had, that she will not be returning. So take that for what you will. Hilda Olamonwe, 15:10. Bailey Hertenstein, 15:10. Great runs from these women. I don't want Valby having such an unbelievably elite race to overshadow what Olamonwe and Hertenstein did. Olamonwe, I was like, okay, this race favors her racing style. It kind of makes sense. She's run faster before. She run 15:06 this season. Second place makes sense. I get that. Bailey Hertenstein running 15:10 to get third is huge. Amazing race from her. That's an all-time performance over 5,000 meters for the women. And I got to admit, I was wrong. Ben, very high on Hertenstein, or at least higher than I was. And a lot of actually the TSR staff was very high on her. I just wasn't. I still wanted, I don't know, I still wanted to see a little bit more at times. This season she was definitively better than she had been the past few seasons, although there was that one 2022 cross-country season where we saw her just reach this freakish peak form, and she was amazing. I just didn't know if we would see that again. Well, we saw it again, and then some. She was amazing, 15:10, huge race for her. I was wrong about her doing the 10K. I was wrong about her opting out of the 10K. I thought she should have done the 10K. Turns out this was actually the best call. I was wrong. So great run from her. Great end to her career. Margot Appleton, 4th. 15:24, good. Kind of it. That's all I have on Margot Appleton. Talk about Juliet Cherubit, 5th, 15:25, basically matches her PR, freshman. She did not get out of the 1,500-meter prelims, but she does earn a 5th place All-American finish in the 5K. I still maintain that she should have just done the 5K. Just because you get an All-American honor in the 5K doesn't mean it all worked out. I still think she should have just done the 5K. However, Cherubit was outstanding in the postseason this year compared to, expectations about where someone was prior to the postseason versus where they are now. I think we like Cherubit. I don't think prior to the postseason that we were like, she's definitely an All-American. I don't think we thought that.
but she runs 4:09 to win the Big 12 title over 1,500 meters against a really good field. Double qualifies for the national meet out of the West Regional. Yeah, West Regional meet, I think. For the 1,500 and 5K. Doesn't make it out of the prelims in the 15, but still in 15:25 to match her PR and get 5th place. Outstanding season for her. Outstanding. And I feel really bad because most years she's winning Best Freshman Award, you know? That will probably go to Doris Lemngole or someone who I'm just not thinking of, but I can't imagine anyone's better than Lemngole this year. So yeah, great runs from Cherubit. I do want her to do well, even if I disagreed about the national meet plan. I still think like she's now gotten to the point where she may end up being one of the most feared runners in the nation for a long, long time. Taylor Rose 6th, Ella Baron 7th, Sadie Sargent 8th. Yeah, it's about right. Baron has these moments where occasionally she'll come up and she'll have just this amazing race. It's not super consistent, which is not to say that she's inconsistent, but like, you know, the best version of Baron isn't, it doesn't happen super often, right? Or at least it happens inconsistently, right? She's usually baseline really solid, but the best version of her, it happens a little bit more intermittently. But PR 15:28, row runs 15:26. Great run by her. Sargent 8th, good run. And then everyone else, you know, Anika Rice 9th, Grayson Larkin 10th of NAU. Good runs. Sophia Kennedy, the freshman, 15:33 from Stanford. She is going to be an outstanding long-term piece for Stanford. I mean, it's crazy. You kind of think about all the talent that they've brought in for the longer distances Stanford has in terms of the recruiting class. And I think we all really like Kennedy. I think we all really saw a lot of potential in her. I don't think we expected her to be this good this early. So great run by her. Chloe Thomas, good run, 15:34 PR. Thorvaldsen, 13th. Hartman, 15th. They came back from the 10K. Hard to be disappointed by that. Solana Hilda's not her postseason, I guess. Struggled a bit in the 5K at the West Regional meet. Barely got in, and then just could not hang here. I think my initial hunch of like, hey, you should do the 15 instead. I don't know if I said that specifically, but I pushed back a little bit more compared to Ben about her entering the 5K than maybe he did. So I don't know. Something clearly where I think she's just not quite 100% because she was running 15:15 earlier in the season. So, and everyone else, that's about it. Scrimgeour DNF. Ramsden did not start. Murphy did not start. Does not surprise me about Ramsden. She won the title. I didn't think she was going to run the 5K. So, all right. And I think that's it. That's all I got. Thank you all for being patient. Do appreciate it. We'll get Ben. We'll do some quick rapid fire takes with Ben on the last few portions of that race, those races, on our next podcast before we kind of get into whatever that next topic will be. Probably end of season awards if I had to guess. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who followed us along this season, this year. It has been a phenomenal year and just to cover, awesome performances. And we hoped you liked it. Subscribe on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, rating and review. Please, please, please like, comment, whatever the kids say nowadays. I know a lot of people, if you're new to the podcast, if you're new to the site and you're like, hey, the summer's here, so I guess nothing's happening. No, actually our best traffic comes in the summer. Believe it or not. It's when everyone wants to subscribe, and rightfully so. We use summer rankings. You will not find summer rankings better than ours. You just won't. Ours is the best. And we post so much content. Our individual top 50 rankings, we write full articles on every top 25 team that we rank, like full in-depth pieces, like long articles on every single team, men and women. We do our top 50 rankings that are a big hit usually. We did a D2, D3 as well. We'll have an AIA this year. Of course, tons of transfer news. There is going to be a lot of coaching news, FYI. Like buckle up. It's coming. Like that's not like me just being like, oh, I'm banking on it. There is going to be a lot of coaching news. In fact, I know of like 2 or 3 moves that I have not yet reported that are happening either very, very soon or already have. So, FYI there. So stay tuned to the site. Go follow us on Instagram. Go follow us on subscribe on YouTube. Again, ratings and reviews, and then go get a subscription to the site. End of season awards will be later this week. We'll cover it in next week's pod. And I think that's it. So thank you again, guys, for following along, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.